What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and we had a ton of football happen over the weekend, and we are here to break it all down with my top 10 lessons learned from Week 11 as we look forward to Week 12 of the fantasy football season. This is where I break down all of the data, usage, the world-famous rookie receiver report, the rookie running back carousel, trends, data, stats, everything you need to know to save you all the time from scrolling box scores and Twitter threads and articles, everything that you need to know in terms of the backfield splits or the players who are breaking out can be found all in this video. As always, if you enjoy, leave a like, subscribe if you're new. And our first takeaway and lesson learned, as always, is the world famous rookie receiver report sponsored by Underdog. When you use promo code RON and you play $5, they will give you $100 in bonus funds for the Pick'em lobby, which always has a gimme Pick'em for new customers. You have the Battle Royales, you have NHL drafts, NBA drafts, NFL drafts, of course. MLB, as crazy as that is, I feel like it's always around the corner because it's so year-long oriented. But all that can be found in the description and the comment section down below. Promo code RON on Underdog. Now, how the rookie receiver report works is these are the rookie wide receivers and tight ends with 54 routes run or more. It's a weird number, but it's enough that it gets all the players I want to talk about into this spreadsheet. As we have here, we have the players week 9, 10, and 11 route share numbers, which is just in terms of pass plays, what percentage of the time are you running a route on those pass plays? Anything over 90% is a player who is a starter for their passing offense and somebody you can then start in fantasy football. Then you have targets per out run. What is your volume on a per out basis? Yards per out run. How efficient are you on a per out basis? First downs per out run. Are you not only efficient in terms of getting volume, creating yards, but are you moving the chains and helping out your offense? And then PFF grade, something in the past that has been a good indicator for future success. How do you look on film? With PFF grade being brought up here, let's talk about the man of the hour, Shedeur McMillan. 8 catches, 130 yards, 2 touchdowns, a full-on breakout game. And this is what happens. We talk about it all the time. Rookie wide receivers turn up down the stretch of a season. Shedeur McMillan finally put it all together. It wasn't even like a crazy target share game for him. He had just a 26% target share is amazing, but that's who he's been. He has been a great target earner this year with a 22.9% targets per out run, but he has been let down by quarterback play. Instead, Bryce Young decides to throw for 400 plus yards, and that gives Shedeur McMillan the opportunity to go for 100 plus multiple touchdowns. Not only his first game over 20 plus PPR points, but his first game over 30 plus PPR points, around 33 PPR points in this game. Absolutely massive by Shedeur McMillan. And I'm going to throw a bunch of stats in your guys' face here just to kind of celebrate the breakout. Not that I think this is going to stick, right? We have some tough matchups here. He gets San Fran, then the Rams, then a bye week, but then he gets at New Orleans in a dome for the first game of the fantasy football playoffs. I don't know that Bryce Young is going to be able to do this moving forward, but it was just nice to see what the ceiling looks like when it all comes together. And he finally hits, or really it's the first wide receiver we have this year who hits an 80 plus PFF grade. And why we care about that number and why it's included on the rookie receiver report is because every rookie wide receiver since 2011, this is a tweet from Dwayne McFarland here, that has had an 80 or better PFF grade, which now Shedeur McMillan is in this club if this number can hold over the rest of the season, which I do think it will. We have Justin Jefferson, Terry McLaurin, Michael Thomas, Garrett Wilson, Drake London, Puka Nacua, Rashee Rice, Jamar Chase, Mike Evans, Keenan Allen, Tank Dell, A.J. Brown, Chris Olave, Brandon Ayuk, Tyreek Hill, Doug Baldwin, Amon-Ra St. Brown. He also then says below this that he actually missed Odell Beckham, who's on this list, of course. And then he said no singular data point is the end-all, be-all for a position. However, this one is pretty strong despite folks loving to bitch about PFF, which is true. That's what I've been doing this entire time, saying I think it's crazy. I think it's crazy that they're being sticklers on Emeka Egbuka. How Ibuka's only at 71.7, I have no clue. It's not the end-all, be-all, but it's a really good stat. It is stronger, as Dwayne is saying, stronger than targets, air yards, and yards per out run. So it's something worth listening to is PFF grade. And again, we're just like, this is just going to be a lot of different stats for you guys to look at. You can see here, Tetairoa McMillan looks like Drake London in terms of this route chart, where he is running routes all over the field, in the slot, on the outside. He actually sets a season-high 13 pass snaps out of the slot. Great usage, again, inside, out, in breakers, out breakers, down the seam. Just absolutely beautiful usage. 49 yards after the catch, 12 targets, 8 catches. There's just not much more that you can say about Tetairoa McMillan, but we're going to. If this is going to be the most, there's only been 13 wide receivers, rookie wide receivers, through week 11 of their rookie season to have 150 plus PPR points. Because the reason that I didn't just do minimum 10 games played rookie seasons is because Tetairoa McMillan is still at 13-ish points per game. But as we know, these rookies turn up down the stretch of the season, right? Like Brian Thomas at this point wasn't at his 15 plus, 16 plus point per game ceiling he ended up at the end of the year, all of that. But if you just look at weeks 1 through 11 of a rookie's, rookie year, they joined this list. Emeka Egbuka and Tetairoa McMillan, a wide receivers to hit 150 plus PPR points. Marcus Colston, Jamar Chase, Puka Nacua. Kelvin Benjamin's actually kind of a funny one. It's not a perfect list because you still do have Kelvin Benjamin and Chase Claypool and Jordan Addison, but you have studs, of course, like Chase, Nacua, Mike Evans, Anquan Bolden, Justin Jefferson, Michael Thomas, really, really good players here. And then the last one we will show is Tetairoa McMillan's superpower, I think, is his ability to move the chains. This 11.7% first downs per out run number for a guy on a team which, yes, Bryce Young looked good this past week, but they're not moving the chains at a super high rate, right? This isn't a high-powered offense that has a billion first downs, right? If I look at their success rate, which is essentially a percentage of plays that are going towards converting a first down, they're probably outside the top 20 teams in success rate. So it's just crazy that he is contributing that much to moving the chains. Yeah, the Panthers are 14th in success rate. That's actually not terrible. That's actually better than I would have thought. But still, accounting for 11.7% is just nuts. You can see the rest of this list, nobody's even at 9% or better in terms of first downs per out run. And he joins this list of rookie wide receivers through 11 career games to have 40 plus first downs through the air. It is, again, him, OBJ, Puka Nacua, Keenan Allen, Anquan Bolden, Marcus Colston, Malik Neighbors, Michael Thomas, Brandon Ayuk, and the only guys to do it on less than 90 targets, Keenan Allen, Tetairoa McMillan, Michael Thomas, which is very interesting because he has a play style as this tall, big X receiver similar to Drake London, but he also, despite having that body type, I guess Michael Thomas is actually a really good comp for him, or Michael Thomas is in that family of Drake London, big slot type of players. Michael Thomas played a lot more in the slot than he did, but you get what I'm saying. Keenan Allen, similar as well, where these guys just move the chains at a high rate, and that's a superpower in the NFL, and really promising for Tetairoa McMillan to have 44 first downs on just 54 catches in the NFL. So Tetairoa McMillan, this was his big day, pretty much cementing him as a top 12 dynasty wide receiver moving forward, and somebody who has a lot of upside down the stretch of the season here. Now, moving on from that, we'll get to our Buccaneers receivers. Emeka Egbuka with a quieter day than usual. It just kind of sucked that the Bucs scored all of their points via Baker Mayfield rushing or Sean Tucker, really. So no touchdowns were on the menu. They just kind of killed the Bills on the ground running the ball in terms of how they were scoring points. 9 targets for Egbuka in this one, but only converted that into 5 catches for 40 yards. But still, 2+ yards per out run. The best targets per out run on this list for Egbuka. He looks fine. I think that his PFF grade is only going to get better from here. Sadly, Tez Johnson, a couple things. Again, not the best Bucs performance through the air, so I wouldn't panic too hard. He does, if you want to look at the positives, he does set a season high 97% of the routes, but just 3 targets for 1 catch, 6 yards. His per out numbers aren't looking amazing. I had some hopes that Tez Johnson could be a similar vibe to Tank Dell, where Tank Dell was this day 3 pick, undersized, and went nuts his rookie year. We'll see if Tez Johnson can do that down the stretch here. He's going to have a runway to do it. He's going to be running enough routes to do it, but this was a little bit of a bump in the road. Then we can talk about Oronde Gadsden. Everybody was freaking out because he got hurt last week. He ends up running 91% of the routes, which is great for him. That's actually a season high 91% route share, and then he set a season high 24% target share. That only turned into like 2 catches for 40 yards, I think is what his stat line ended up being. So not the best day. Yeah, 2 catches for 41 yards, but the Chargers just kind of fell apart here. I don't really have, I don't know if anyone's looking for analysis on the Chargers, but it was just a tough day. Like, Herbert gets hurt. The whole offensive line is awful, and they were just never really in this game after the first quarter. So they have a bye week to get healthy and rest up, and then they get Las Vegas at home in the Chargers Dome. So I would feel better about most of the Chargers moving forward as we get into week 13 for them. Then we can talk about the Titans here. Here's the issue. All of them got hurt. I believe Alec Eilmanor picks up a hamstring injury in here, despite actually running more routes than he did in week 9, but he might have ran more routes than he did in week 9 because Calvin really snaps his, I think, like tibia, which is a brutal injury. That is awful. He's done for the year for sure. Chimere Dike suffers a concussion in this one, so you might be looking at Chimere Dike all the way down here and wondering how the hell does he have 28% route share after 93%? He gets a concussion. Alec Eilmanor, like I said, picks up a hamstring. So I think, honestly, he got his routes boosted because receivers were dropping like flies. If you want to, I know maybe some of you guys are out there in Dynasty holding on to like Taxi Squad, Xavier Restrepo. This would be it. I know he got cut. He might be hanging out on their practice squad, or he might be one of the first guys they call, but they're going to be looking for bodies at wide receiver. They don't have Tyler Lockett. Calvin Ridley now out for the year. I mean, brutal situation for Cam Ward to be a part of here, but we're going to get routes and opportunity for all the rookies here, which then brings us to Gunnar Helm, who I really like. His per route numbers for a tight end in this situation, like, you got to remember, like, let's actually do some sorting here of if we were to sort all of the Tennessee players. Yeah, here you go. You can see it up here. His per route numbers are the best of the bunch. He beats both of them in targets per route run. He beats both of them in yards per route run, first downs per route run, PFF grade, despite being a tight end, which is really impressive. I really like Gunnar Helm. I don't know what his ceiling is in the NFL. Like, his ceiling is probably like Dalton Schultz. But for like a day 3 pick at tight end, that's not a bad upside case whatsoever. But I just wanted to point that out. So Gunnar Helm, I think that's why his routes jumped up here, right? He goes from 26% a bye week to 51% because of the receiver injuries, but that might also just be how he runs more routes in general for the rest of the year. Then we have Kyle Williams, very, very upset. I was going to say very upset with him, and I kind of am upset with him, or just disappointed. I really liked Kyle Williams coming out of school. I just have to be completely honest with you guys. He runs 78% of the routes here, really mainly because of the Kayshon Boutte injury. You can't run 78% of the routes against the New York Football Jets coming off of trading Quinnen Williams and Sauce Gardner and come away with 0 catches. That cannot happen if you are going to be a guy in this league. He is now below 10% targets per out run, below 1 yards per out run, below 2% first downs per out run, below 60 PFF grade. And after an entire year of him just kind of collecting dust on the Patriots bench, he's had 3 weeks in a row here of climbing in route share, and the production outside of one big play has not been there. So I hate to say Jalen Polk, but it's very much Jalen Polk vibes right now of like, I hate to say it. Like, I like Kyle Williams. I'm rooting for the guy, but I would be floored if Kyle Williams ends up being anybody that you are starting weekly in fantasy football for the rest of his career. I hope I'm wrong, but we have a decent route sample at this point, and he's just got nothing to show for. Then we can talk about Pat Bryant. He actually hits a season-high 18% target share. He has now had 3 weeks in a row of 60% route share, and he gets 82 receiving yards in this one, also a season high. I don't know what his ceiling is. His comp coming out of school was like Tim Patrick, which still seems about fine, right? And that's something we have to kind of understand with these guys is not every one of them is going to be Puka Nacua or Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson. Some of these guys are going to be Tim Patrick or Marvin Jones or Jerome Simpson, like not everybody can be the best. And that's kind of what some of these guys are trending towards. That's kind of where I would put Pat Bryant. I think he's going to be an NFL receiver, right? He's showing some strengths here, but I'd be shocked if he was like, holy shit, this guy is a Pro Bowler. Then we can talk about the Chicago Bears. We have Luther Burden and we have Colston Loveland. Colston Loveland, this one's tough because his per route numbers are actually kind of turning a corner here where they looked rough early on, but now they're strong enough that I believe in him long-term in Dynasty as a top 6 tight end in Dynasty. He looks good. I'm all the way bought in. right, 17.5%. Remember, when we're talking about tight ends, we're grading these per route numbers on a curve here. 77 PFF grades, really good. 7% plus first downs per out run, really good. 1.74 yards per out run and 17.5% targets per out run are also great for a part-time rookie tight end, and that's the issue here. 56% of the routes last week, 58% this week. Ever since Kmet's come back, he hasn't been able to run more than 60% of the routes, and if that's the case, you can't start him confidently. So now we're in a spot where I like him in Dynasty, but in redraft, if you have these guys on waivers like Theo Johnson and Dalton Schultz and Cade Otton, those are all much better, Jawan Johnson, all much better options than Colston Loveland on a week-to-week basis until Loveland can prove that he can get to the 75% plus number with Kmet active in a game, and he hasn't shown that just yet. Then we have Luther Burden. This one is huge. He runs, I believe it's the first time this year he runs more routes than Olamide Zaccheaus. He runs 61% of the routes. Huge. That he is now climbing up the depth chart. He's ascending. His pro numbers are great. 20% plus targets per out run, 2 plus yards per out run. 7.7% first downs per out run is the only one that's like a little iffy, and then 75 PFF grade. Looks really good. Wheels up. We are finally, like, we're ready for takeoff. All we need now is a game where he runs 80% plus of the routes, scores a touchdown, and creates a lot of buzz. Sadly, that was not this game. He does get a season-high 5 targets, which is good, but he turns that only into 3 catches for 27 yards. He had his second drop of the entire season this week, so not great. You hate to see him not take advantage of this playing time boost, but if this can stick week after week after week, we're getting to a spot where maybe as we get to the fantasy playoffs, that Luther Burden can be confidently started in our lineup. Then we have Harold Fannin, and this was my concern with him. Hilarious that, I don't know if it was on a video I put here or on the BDGE channel, but I've been talking about Harold Fannin recently. Maybe it was on this one. I had a guy chirping at me. He's like, oh, you don't watch the games because clearly, even with David Njoku, he's had a role. And that's not what I've been saying, is that David Njoku was banged up when Fannin had his best stretch of games. And now that Njoku's back in the mix, this was my concern, is that we could go from 75% route share down to 58%. And if you have any game at 58% route share as a tight end, you are not startable, and you are not a better option than, again, your Dalton Schultz, Cade Otton, Theo Johnsons of the world. These are guys who are running 75% plus of the routes and actually catching footballs from people not named Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel. So Harold Fannin's a guy who I think is a top 10 tight end in Dynasty, but I'm not dying to start him in redraft. And that's what I was trying to say last week, and I hold strong on that. We now have, since the bye week, he had 8.4 PPR points last week, then 4.6 this week. And if these routes are going to sit in the 60% range like this, or even just be inconsistent week to week, he's not a great start, because in this offense, they're not scoring enough touchdowns for him to have like a crazy high ceiling in a given game. And this is coming from somebody who loves Harold Fannin. Then we have Mason Taylor. His routes are declining, which sucks. I think it's really just because Jeremy Ruckert is kind of gaining back some ground on him in terms of being the better blocking tight end, and just kind of, this heavy set world that a lot of the NFL is living in has just kind of made Mason Taylor more of a rotational piece than a guy you can start. So I'd say if you have him in redraft, you can drop Mason Taylor. I know that they're going to go to Tyrod Taylor this week, but 69% of the routes on the 58% of the routes, it's just not going to cut it. The per out numbers aren't good. I don't know. If you want to hold out and see what happens with Tyrod Taylor, I wouldn't blame you, but I would just be shocked. In terms of Dynasty with Mason Taylor, I'd have him in that range of however you feel about Terrence Ferguson and Elijah Arroyo. He's right in there. Then we can talk about the Texans receivers. Again, I want to strangle this staff. They stay just like they did it last week with the Jaguars, where they pulled the rabbit out of the hat. This week versus a terrible Titans team. I know that they had Davis Mills, but when you have this defense that the Texans do, there is just no reason that this game was like even close. And they continue to play Xavier Hutchinson and Christian Kirk and whoever else they have in this wide receiver room over the rookies that they spent big boy draft capital on. Jaden Higgins here. We had a quote this week from D'Amico Ryan saying, well, these guys aren't rookies anymore. And it's like, yes, they still are. All you did was increased Higgins from 53% to 57%, and you actually decreased Knoll from 35% to 30%. Knoll's per out numbers, again, look really, really good. Jaden Higgins' per out numbers are improving. He now has 7 or more targets in 3 of his last 4 games, despite not running a ton of routes. It's frustrating. They're both only stashes until Higgins can get up here, and that just feels like such a long climb. I wish I had something more positive, but the Texan staff is very annoying. We can talk about Trey Harris. He goes from 30%ish to 53%. I want to say that that's because the Chargers just had a lot of garbage time versus the Jaguars when they got killed in this game. I don't know. I wouldn't get too crazy with that Trey Harris usage. We could talk about Matthew Golden. He was banged up coming into this game. He kind of leaves because of an injury. He had one catch in this game. Matthew Golden is easily the guy in terms of those high-end rookie wide receivers we all had high hopes for, right? Whether that was Luther Burden, Ibuka, Tedero McMillan, Travis Hunter, etc. Matthew Golden by far the one I'm most concerned about. We now have his last 2 games under 40% of the routes. Again, probably injury, but still his per route numbers are awful. So I don't know. I don't know what he looks like as a finished product in the NFL. And then we can do some cleanup duty here. You have Isaiah Bond, who comes back healthy after getting hurt 48% of the routes. He had 1 target in the back of the end zone that Shedeur whiffed him on, and then that was really it when it comes to Isaiah Bond. To put myself up here for now. We could talk about Isaac Tesla. I have some somebody that I loved that I drafted him in Dynasty. I was feeling very good about Isaac Tesla. It's firmly on. I don't know if this guy's an NFL wide receiver watch. Per out numbers terrible across the board. His routes are going up, right? He's at least on the field, but he's really more of kind of just this ancillary piece. He's almost like a downfield blocker for when Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams get the ball. And he has just 4 catches on the entire season. Really not good for a 3rd-round rookie. Terrence Ferguson, sadly, I think that Terrence Ferguson is just kind of seen by the Rams as a developmental tight end that they're going to unleash next year. Kind of when push came to shove in a really important divisional game versus the Seahawks, he gets scaled back to under 20% of the routes. His per route numbers are still great. I just think he's a very raw tight end. I think that this is going to be the year 2 breakout for Ferguson. And then really sad on Jackson Hawes. I don't understand what happened. Any Bills fan out there can, if you want to let me know, I don't know if, I doubt that Hawes got hurt in this game. I looked everywhere. He did not get hurt in this game. I just don't know how you lose Dalton Kincaid, and then that results in Jackson Hawes getting his route share cut into a 3rd. Dawson Knox, I will say Dawson Knox ends up running a ton of routes and is somebody you can probably stream moving forward, but really bummed about this. Jackson Dawes was a guy I had a lot of high hopes for. These per route numbers are great on a really small sample, but I think that he's a good player. I thought that he would get more routes. He did not. Now, moving on from that, we have the rest of this video to talk about. We have our second takeaway, which is take a bow, Bryce Young, kind of just to piggyback on our Tedero McMillan part, but I did just want to give Bryce Young some flowers because last week I kind of buried him a little bit with just he had a terrible game. I want to say it was against the Saints where just it wasn't even close. It was just super ugly. And then he comes out here and just dimes all over the place. The touchdown to Xavier Legette was a beauty. He climbs up in the pocket. Shout out to Xavier Legette for actually catching that ball. I will say Xavier Legette ran less routes than Jalen Coker. So I think Jalen Coker is still ahead of him has now actually kind of maybe passed him on the depth chart, but Xavier Legette made such a great play that I think that Coker and Legette are kind of cannibalizing each other. There's also just not enough volume and efficiency to go around in this offense past Tedero McMillan anyways. But a really strong showing from Bryce Young, throwing it all over the yard, 3 touchdowns, 400 yards. We need more games like this from Bryce Young. It's a little bit concerning that when we look at his entire career, that was only his 3rd game of 300-plus passing yards. His second one came in week 2 of this year against the Arizona Cardinals, 3 touchdowns in this game. It was his best game as a pro. I would love to just see him build on this moving forward. And this Falcons defense is no joke. They allow 188 passing yards per game, which is the 6th best in the NFL. And that's including the 400 piece that Bryce Young just put on them. If I looked at the stats going into this week, it'd probably be a top 5 number with 170 allowed per game. Then we can talk about as well on the other side of this game, we have Bijan Robinson, who I'm not going to pat myself on the back for saying to buy Bijan Robinson, but what I will say is we were correct in that they took 4 losses to the Dome, and it was just there was just no way that they were going to keep on doing this split with Algier. They did the same song and dance last year where Algier was a nuisance early on, and then they were just all right, let's just ride Bijan rest of the year. That's where we're at now. If you look at the fantasylife.com utilization score, they have a great utilization report tool tab. It's all amazing. And he had his highest UR score, which is highest utilization score, which just takes into account his snaps, his targets, everything. He had his best utilization on the year. His highest inside the 5 rush attempt percentage was 75% of those carries, which is huge. And then also an 85% rush attempt share. only his second time this season over 80%. So the usage was amazing. We would have liked to see it in a win, and we'll see how things go now with Kirk Cousins and no Drake London. Are they going to stack the box against Bijan? I don't know, but that was his second 30-plus PPR point game of the year, and I think that Bijan's going to be just fine moving forward. Now, after that, we have our third takeaway, which I just wrote down as Sean Tucker is #pleased. I don't know if you guys have ever seen his Twitter, but it's hilarious. After every game, he does #pleased with his jersey number. But over the last 4 games from J.J. Zacharyson here, you can see Tucker has gone from 9.1% of the rushing share to 41.4%, to 47.4%, to 65.5%, and a season-high 44% snap share. In this game, he has 19 carries, 106 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 catches, 34 yards, another touchdown, and he out-touched Rachaad White 12-2 in the second half. It's tough that they lose this game, because if they win this game emphatically after a 3-game slide, I would be talking about Sean Tucker as the next Rico Dowdle, where this is now his backfield moving forward. They won a game on his behalf, but that's not the case. I think that he's at least moved ahead of Rachaad White moving forward. But Bucky Irving seems like he could be back as soon as next week. So it's a really tricky situation with Sean Tucker. He's still a guy that we're going to talk about in tomorrow's waiver wire video, somebody I want on waivers, but it's tough. I'm somewhere between not wanting to get carried away, but then also really liking Sean Tucker. I think that I saw a stat from Davis Maddock today that Sean Tucker has the 2 highest PPR scores by a Buccaneers running back over the last 2 years. He is a monster, just kind of buried on a tough depth chart. I think Bucky Irving is great in his own right, so it's not like Bucky sucks, makes Sean Tucker the one. It's just there's a lot of good backs and a good offense behind Tristan Wirfs on this offense. Now, on the other side of this, Keon Coleman out of nowhere gets healthy scratch because he misses a meeting and I think has maturity issues, and Deion Dawkins is talking about him in the media. Keon Coleman, if you have him in fantasy, you can absolutely cut him. Brutal start to his career so far. But if you are curious how things shook out without Keon Coleman, this is from the PFF article they do with Nathan Yonke after every single game, where they show you the breakdown of usage and everything. And you can see here, Khalil Shakir is going to lead the team in routes run, but still 22 of 33 for him, only 3 targets. He's never going to be an every down wide receiver. And then it was almost like a hockey shift approach where nobody else in terms of wide receivers had 20 or more routes run. You had 16 for Josh Palmer, 17 for Curtis Samuel, 15 for Gabe Davis. Tyrell Shavers is a fun player with 14. None of those guys are useful in fantasy football, though. It's essentially Khalil Shakir. But then you can see Dawson Knox 28 routes run out of 33. He actually ran the most routes on the day, which is a huge deal for him. Despite having a quiet game from a fantasy perspective, Dawson Knox in any game that Dalton Kincaid is not healthy for is going to be a fine streamer moving forward. 28 of 33 routes is just enough for Dawson Knox to be relevant. Then we can talk about my fourth takeaway, which is just this Packers-Giants game in general. There's just a lot to go through. We have Josh Jacobs getting hurt, where if you look at Josh Jacobs, this is from J.J. Zacharyson, after Josh Jacobs left Green Bay's Week 11 game, Emmanuel Wilson was the only Packers running back with a rush attempt. Chris Brooks saw his lone attempt in the first quarter. Wilson outsnapped Brooks 39-5. We'll talk about Christian Watson in a second. But Emmanuel Wilson gets 11 carries, 40 yards, a touchdown. He gets a catch and 9 yards in this game. So essentially, it seems like it's up in the air whether or not Josh Jacobs is going to miss this week. He dodged IR. He's potentially going to play this week. He might not play this week. And really in any game that Josh Jacobs doesn't suit up for, Emmanuel Wilson is going to get 80% of the workload and be a fine RB2, free space kind of guy you can start. And with playoff pushes happening here, the minute we get any clarity on if Josh Jacobs is going to play this week, if he's not, Emmanuel Wilson is somebody that you can go all in for if he would get into your starting lineup this week. Then we can talk about Christian Watson. He balls out in this game. He goes in terms of target shares, 11.4%, 11.4%, 14.3% to 20% this week. In terms of routes, he goes from 65%, 75%, 83%, down to 80%, but still, that's fine. Anything over 80%, especially on the Packers, is huge. So he's kind of slotting in as the number one receiver on this team, despite coming off a Week 18, Week 17 ACL tear last year. Just honestly blown away with Christian Watson. I didn't take him seriously at all in the offseason, but he's now a fine boom-bust flex play, somewhere in that range from Jamison Williams down to your Alec Pierce, of a guy you put in your flex spot and you pray for good things to happen. He gets 4 catches, 46 yards, 2 touchdowns in this game for a 20-piece that if you got him in your lineup, you got him right off the waiver wire and got a really nice boost. Now, on the other side of this game, you have Jameis Winston not getting fully unleashed. Only 29 pass attempts in a negative game script, 201 passing yards, not great. And both running backs in this game get 15-plus carries. Now, I will say as well, no Darius Slayton. Something to note is that Isaiah Hodgins is back in the mix. That's a name I don't know if you guys remember, but in like 2022, he wasn't a league winner, but he got hot for the fantasy playoffs in 2022. He was a fun name back in the day. I don't know that I'd pick him up and give him really any run in fantasy these days, but he is an interesting name to look out for. Wandale, of course, leads them in targets, but why I say that they didn't unleash Jameis Winston is because both Tyrone Tracy and Devin Singletary both had 15-plus carries. If we look at the utilization reports comparison tool, you can see here, Devin Singletary gets 2 touchdowns in this game, pretty much taking over all of the inside the 10 touches. So Singletary is now operating as like the goal line specialist, which I was shocked at because I thought Singletary really got most of his usage with Dable because of their Bills days. I know that that's crazy to say, but Singletary was with Dable on the Bills. I really thought that Singletary kept getting all this run because Dable just had the familiarity. Dable's fired, and Singletary actually now has like a better role or a fine role here where he gets 15-plus carries, goal line work. He scores 17.7 PPR points, but then there was so much work to go around. Maybe this is a Kafka thing. Maybe this is just a Green Bay Packers defense thing that we also had Tyrone Tracy with about half of the rush attempts, 45% of the routes. He had a 14% target share, and he got some explosive plays to get him to 17.9 PPR points. His final stat line on the day, Tyrone Tracy, was 19 carries, 88 yards, 4 catches, 51 yards. Next week, they're going to go on the road in the Detroit Dome, which should favor Tyrone Tracy as they are in a trailing game script in a dome environment. So both guys are startable in a given week, with obviously Tracy pulling ahead, but Singletary kind of just has this red zone role on lock. Then our fifth takeaway, and sadly we already talked about it last week, but it's worth bringing up again because every week people are panicking on Jefferson and Addison, or really not Addison, really Justin Jefferson. The JJ McCarthy stuff is scary, man. It's scary, and I say this as a Jets fan that has been through this charade where, I don't know, once you're starting to see on the timeline like, oh, you guys wouldn't have had the patience with Peyton Manning, or you wouldn't have the patience for Anthony or Josh Allen. It's like once you start getting those comparisons in, it's scary season for these quarterbacks. I looked at the first 5 starts of JJ McCarthy versus Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson had more passing yards. JJ McCarthy 6 touchdowns, 8 interceptions to Zach Wilson's 4-9. Zach Wilson better completion percentage. Zach Wilson better yards per attempt. Zach Wilson better passer rating. Zach Wilson better EPA per play. Zach Wilson better completion percentage over expectation. And JJ McCarthy has one more win through 5 starts. So it's looking really rough. That's his passing chart. 16 of 32, 150 yards, minus 14% completion percentage over expectation. And I also went through and counted. On throws 10 or more yards downfield, he was 4 of 15, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Just really rough. It's early, right? Only 5 starts, but you could usually tell. Just like blatantly throwing things into the stands. I think that the schedule eases up a little bit here, right? Like let's see the schedule here. No, it doesn't. No, it does not. My bad, guys. You actually, he's going to go on the road versus Green Bay in the cold, and then on the road versus Seattle in the cold. Those are 2 very, very strong defenses. So I don't know. You just hope that Jefferson can figure something out. But for a first-round pick, Jefferson is looking really, really rough, and it's not his fault, but it's also very disappointing so far what Jefferson has been for fantasy football. I will touch on the running back situation, though. Aaron Jones here gets back-to-back weeks of being the lead back. 72% of the snaps in week 10, 67% of the snaps this past week. Doesn't get a touchdown. Jordan Mason ends up scoring a touchdown in this one, but Aaron Jones is a set-and-forget RB2 for the rest of the year. He has been the lead back. It just simply comes down to, can this be a competent offense in any capacity? And then Aaron Jones is going to be fine. Jefferson will be fine, etc. But it's just really, really tough. I will say, on the Bears side of things, if you're spooked on Caleb or Roma Dunze or anybody, this Vikings defense is really strong. It's just that the game script of the offense kind of puts them in precarious situations. But They allow the 7th least passing yards per game in the NFL. Brian Flores is really, really good. So I don't know. I just wouldn't panic too hard on any of the Bears kind of underperforming this week. And then we can talk about the rookie running back carousel. All I ask with this one in terms of what this is sponsored by, it's just the channel. It's just sponsored by the channel. Make sure that if you're watching this video, it's week 12. If you're still checking in, which I appreciate all you guys. If you're still checking in, I understand how this thing goes. We get to week 12 and week 13 and people's teams die off and they're not in the playoffs and we lose a lot of views. So if you're still hanging around watching these videos, make sure you're subscribed. And while you're checking, if you're subscribed, leave a like on the channel. Now, the rookie running back carousel, very similar to the rookie receiver report. We go through the snap share of every single running back, their points per game, their PPR per touch, so their efficiency, and then how they look in terms of PFF. And speaking of the Vikings and Bears, let's actually start with Kyle Monangai here at the bottom of the screen. Over the last 2 weeks, still around that 35% to 40% snap share, but this is a great tweet from Ryan Heath kind of highlighting that his usage has stayed the same, but he has kind of morphed into the Bears goal line back. He got 2 of the 3 inside the 10 carries, both of which came after Swift was stuffed at the 8, resulting in a Monangai score. He had a touchdown last week as well. So if he's going to get, 8 to 14 touches in a given week, and then also get the goal line carry, he is now all of a sudden a guy that you can start in desperation as your RB2 and be in a decent spot. So Monangai trending up here. Then we can kind of go top down. Trevion Henderson on the Thursday night game went nuts. He scores a hat trick with 3 touchdowns coming on the back of him going nuts versus the Buccaneers the week before. So he had 28 PPR points in week 10, 32.3 PPR points this past week. Over the last 3 weeks, he has been at 24.3 points per game as the RB4. Now, what everybody is out here saying is what's going to happen when Ramondre's healthy. We shall see. I think that there's going to be a lot of people, even in the comments on this video, where they love to bet against the rookies. They're going to say, oh, well, you guys are all celebrating and victory lapping. Let's see what happens when Ramondre comes back. Let's see, right? Because most of the time when this stuff happens with the rookie running backs is the veteran comes back and he does not get to have the role he had before. My guess is it's going to be a 60-40 split in favor of Henderson. It's still going to be a little bit frustrating. We're probably going to get Henderson scaled down from, his 20-plus touch workload here to more like 12 to 15 touches, but that's fine. If he can give you 12 to 15 touches as a set-and-forget RB2 every week, that is going to be a win for Trevion Henderson, and that is what I am expecting. Really, nobody has the answers. We will see how that goes, but I assume people who weren't drafting Trevion Henderson are going to be pessimistic. People who were drafting Trevion Henderson are going to be optimistic. That is just simply how this goes. People are going to argue. People are going to be just wait till Ramondre gets back and, rubbing their hands, and we shall see. Then we have Woody Marks. This one is tough, because we love to see this, especially with the Texans staff. I think this is the first time we have strung back-to-back games of a 65% snap share for Woody Marks. That is huge. He gets 19 touches in this game. That is huge. The issue is he only gives you 6.1 PPR points. And I kind of have some real questions about if Woody Marks is actually that good. As somebody that is so receiving-oriented, being at only a 0.82 PPR per touch isn't fantastic. I just wonder if he's that good, but we've seen this happen in the NFL where running backs come in, they get a ton of volume, they're not that good, but they still score fantasy points. Maybe that's the case with Woody Marks, but all of his efficiency numbers aren't that great. He's just kind of the number one running back in a room with Nick Chubb and the Funky Bunch, So Woody Marks is fine for now. It's just like a high-end RB3, low-end RB2, but he does get the Bills defense next week, who we just saw Sean Tucker run wild against. Maybe Woody Marks can kind of come alive here. Then we have RJ Harvey. This was a big one, right? The first game without J.K. Dobbins. The good part is he gets a 60% plus snap share. That is huge, right? It's not some like weird hot hand nonsense. He was the lead back in this game. 14 opportunities as well, but he doesn't give you a good stat line. Now, I will say the Chiefs defense is very good. It was a low-scoring game. Only 8 PPR points, 11 carries, 30 yards, 3 catches, 20 yards. Not great, but that's a good roll. 60% plus of the snaps, 14 opportunities. We will take that all day. He then goes into a bye, but then coming out of the bye, if J.K. Dobbins on IR now, going to be missing time, he's going to go on the road versus Washington, who isn't a good defense, and then on the road in the Las Vegas Dome. So we have some things to look forward to. Now, yes, Jaleel McLaughlin did steal the goal line carry. That is concerning, but it was only a one-touch sample of the goal line roll, and it came after 3 straight RJ Harvey touches. So he might have just came out to get a breather. So Who knows? I wouldn't panic just yet in terms of the goal line role and, Sean Payton being difficult. But things change so much week to week with Sean Payton that we're going to come fresh off a bye here, and I don't think that anybody has locked up the goal line role with J.K. Dobbins sidelined. Sadly, we had another takeover, which we love to see. I say sadly because he gets hurt in this one, Basil Tootin, as you can see across the bottom of the screen. And this is what happens this time of the year, right? These running backs, these wide receivers, they break out. They become guys who really matter in fantasy football. And we started to see some of these guys, percolate and figure this out here this week. Basil Tootin, you would think a lot of his usage and his touchdown came from garbage time, but he actually scores the first touchdown in this game, and he actually out-carried ETN in the first half, which is huge. The issue is that he then hurt his ankle in this game. He told the reporters after the game that he's fine, but we've also seen this happen before where it's like, it's the lowest high ankle sprain of all time, and then the next day happens and his ankle swells up to the size of a balloon, and he actually misses 2 to 3 games. So we'll see what happens with Basil Tootin, but at least we can say 15 carries, 74 yards, a touchdown, and before injury, he was actually making a lot of progress on the starting role from ETN. Then we have Ollie Gordon. He ends up with 10 carries inside the 10-yard line to Achan's 9 this season. He's a fun guy who's going to mix in and get touchdowns here and there. He had 9 touches in this game, his most since week 9, which is good to see, but still really just Achan's handcuff. It is good to see, though, 39% of the snaps versus 19% in week 9, 6% in week 10, but really nothing more for Ollie Gordon. Then we can talk about Quinshon Judkins at the bottom here. It's kind of just the same story that he is getting all the opportunities. He's getting, he gets 19 opportunities in this game, but this offense is so bad. They're stacking the box, and if he can't just kind of he has to be an undeniable talent, which it looked like he was going to be early on. Just like he's that good of a running back, he can overcome this. We're now on 5 games in a row of under 4 yards per carry. So I'm not saying it's obviously not over for him. Like any running back in the NFL getting 19 opportunities in a given game is going to matter in fantasy football. But early in the year, there's a lot of buzz of like maybe this guy should be like a top 12 running back rest of season moving forward. He's that good. Now he's like a low-end RB2. He's going to get the volume in a bad offense. He's fine, but nothing all that crazy. The last player we're going to talk about here, and I'll show you guys the rest of the chart if you want to look at kind of the scrubs at the bottom. Bill Krosky-Merritt. I will wave the white flag here. We had high hopes for him. It just kind of didn't go well. Jaden Daniels gets hurt, but then even with Jaden Daniels hurt, he has kind of squandered opportunities, and then now Chris Rodriguez is in the mix, and we now have 30 snaps going to Chris Rodriguez, then 18 to Bill, then 17 to McNichols. It is a full-fleshed running back by committee. Rodriguez will be a waiver wire ad, but I wouldn't go too crazy on a guy who had 9.5 PPR points. Yes, he had 16 touches, but it didn't really result in a bunch. They get a bye week this week, so you can't even use him. And then they're going to play Denver in their first game back. So Washington is just kind of a mess. We can talk about our 7th takeaway, which kind of expands. Like the reason I didn't talk about Caleb Johnson or Taj Brooks is because they kind of come into effect here with our next takeaway. Where I just want to talk about the Steelers game, where we can see that Chase Brown's opportunity share numbers over the past 2 weeks have gone at 85% plus carry shares, 20% plus target shares, 20 plus weighted opportunities in those games from Ryan Heath. Now that's definitely because what's his name? P. Ryan's not in the mix, but for as long as P. Ryan's not in the mix, Chase Brown's getting a ton of opportunity, and this might just stick once P. Ryan comes back. But you can definitely see at the bottom, Taj Brooks, 11% of the snaps, just not a factor whatsoever. And then on the Steelers side of things, Jalen Warren goes down with injury. Kenneth Gainwell comes in, gets all the third down snaps, gets all of the inside the 10 snaps, which means that's everything. That's all the high-value touches. We want the receptions. We want the goal line touches. That is what Gainwell is going to get without Warren healthy. If Warren misses any time, Gainwell is going to be a top 24 option. Of course, Caleb Johnson, only 35% of the snaps after that, and he's just not very good. Like you can look at 41.1 PFF grade for Caleb Johnson is just hilariously bad. Yeah, that one's looking tough. I don't feel good about him in Dynasty. I don't feel good about him in redraft. Like Caleb Johnson is trending towards Trey Sermon, and I hate to say that out loud for any young man out there, but that's where the reality is set. Now, our 8th takeaway is some more backfield stuff. We have the Charbonnet and Walker split here, which, I don't know. I wouldn't get too crazy. Over the last 3 weeks, he has gotten 67%, 50%, and then 100% of the inside the 5 rush attempts, which is huge. But it was really only this past week in week 11 that he set a season-high 18.6 PPR points and a season-high 76 utilization score. So we like to see that, where his utilization is better, his production is better. I just need to see it stick over a big sample, but we are starting to see a little bit of a trend here. Over the last 3 games from Ryan Heath, we have 13.1 points per game with 4 of 5 carries inside the 5 for Kenneth Walker versus just 1 of 10 carries inside the 5 over his first 6 games with 10 points per game. So things are trending up. Don't get too crazy about it, but things are trending up for Kenneth Walker. We could talk about Puka Nacua, which he went from somebody that if we were to, reset every team in week 7 and redraft everything, he would be the 101. Coming off of his injury, I don't know if they're saving him for the playoffs. I don't know if it's because they've been using so much 13 personnel, but he's kind of taken a little bit of a back seat here where he goes from, in terms of fantasy points data, wide receiver 1 in points per game, wide receiver 2 in volume per game, wide receiver 3 in first read share. He's now the wide receiver 6 in points per game over his last 3 games, the wide receiver 42 in usage, and the wide receiver 18 in first read share. And if you go even deeper than that and you look at his route percentage, he's so good, and this offense is so good, he doesn't have to be a full-time receiver. But week 6, 55% of the routes. Oh, no, that's when he got hurt. Week 9, 65% of the routes. Week 10, 62% of the routes. Week 11, 71% of the routes. And that's just simply not going to cut it to be, a top 3 wide receiver rest of season like he is on all of our rest of season rankings. So he definitely gets a downgrade for me, where we'll see what CeeDee Lamb does tonight. But I would now put him below Jamar Chase moving forward. And then, CeeDee Lamb will be the one tonight, where he goes from undisputed number 1 wide receiver in fantasy to now definitely below JSN, definitely below Jamar Chase. Again, we'll see about CeeDee Lamb tonight. I might be forgetting a name, but to somebody who's kind of trending towards wide receiver 6 rest of the season, which is still amazing, but not the same weapon he was early on in the year. And then in this same game, we can kind of talk about Rashid Shaheed still working up in routes after getting traded to the Seahawks. They lose this game maybe because maybe they want to use Rashid Shaheed more moving forward, but he is yet to run more than Cooper Kupp in terms of routes in a single game this season. But I do think we're going to see things continue to ramp up for him. But we will keep an eye on when Torrey Horton returns, the rookie, how things are going to look. Then my 9th takeaway is Brock Purdy returns, Ricky Pearsall returns, and really just everything that went on with this crazy Cardinals versus 49ers game. It was never really a close game, but of course Brissett on his side, 452 passing yards, NFL record 47 completions, which is just nuts. And he also gets Michael Wilson to go crazy with 15 catches, 185 yards, 18 targets. Michael Wilson's going to be somebody we'll talk about on the waiver wire show. Trey McBride has a day as well. Bam Knight scores a touchdown. Bam Knight kind of the lead back in this game, but we're talking 14 carries for 36 yards and a touchdown in terms of the entire team. That's just not going to cut it. A longest rush of 7. We'll see what happens. We're still waiting on Trey Benson to return. And then, of course, we get Purdy back, who looks amazing. 3 touchdowns, 200 yards, only takes 1 sack. Of course, Kittle gets right because Purdy's back in, 67 yards and 2 touchdowns. Kittle, I think you can bump up with Purdy back. The whole offense you can bump up with Purdy back. Don't get me wrong, Mac Jones has been great, but Brock Purdy just operates things in a way that we are used to over the last few years. So you can kind of just, set and forget George Kittle, set and forget McCaffrey, set and forget Brock Purdy moving forward. Then we can talk about our 10th takeaway, Shedeur Sanders' debut. I just feel like you can't talk about this week without bringing this up. Just what a crazy turn of events here. He comes into this game, 4 of 16, 47, just one of the worst debuts I can remember. Just absolutely awful. And you got Josina Anderson on Twitter defending him for not getting first team reps, which is just hilarious. I will say, though, on the Ravens side, Lamar has a bad game. Nobody really... I guess Derrick Henry scores a touchdown. Zay Flowers is okay in this game. I wouldn't go nuts about any of it. The Browns' defense is just so good, and the Browns' offense is so bad. They almost lull you to sleep in this game script of they force you into the deep end of can you win this game 18 to 14 or something. I'm trying to think of a football number. You get what I'm saying? Can you win this game 15 to 12? And come out of it. They're like the Iowa football of the NFL is the Browns. So I wouldn't get too crazy about that, especially with these quarterbacks being so bad and then Myles Garrett being so good. And then my final takeaway is from the night game, or with Dan Campbell calling plays, we are getting some really, really strong Jahmyr Gibbs usage. And even in a game where the Lions got crushed and the Lions offense didn't look good, Gibbs still gives you 19.6 PPR points, 12 for 39 rushing, but he gives you 5 catches for 107 yards. And we're getting some really nice usage with Dan Campbell calling plays. It's from Jacob Gibbs here. 72% snap rate in Week 11, his highest ever in a healthy David Montgomery game. With Detroit struggling to get a push up front, Gibbs was unlocked in the receiving game. Season high route rate, 22% target share, and a career high 107 receiving yards. We have JJ Zachariason on the bottom. With Dan Campbell calling plays over the last 2 weeks, Jahmyr Gibbs has target shares of 12.5% and 22.2%. In his 5 games prior, he averaged 8.6%. So he's getting unlocked in the receiving game. He's getting unlocked from a snap share percentage. And I think once they go back home this week against the Giants in the Dome, I think we're going to see another Jahmyr Gibbs 30-plus PPR point, like, blow-up game would be my expectation. I'll also say with Campbell calling plays, it's very clear that Jameson Williams is a focal point for him getting involved, especially with those, like, deep, like, dig routes over the middle. He loves those. He's had 7 targets over the last 2 weeks, a touchdown over the last 2 weeks, averaging only over 20-plus points per game with Dan Campbell calling plays. And then the other side, I think they'll see better days. Like, in general, this was a matchup between 2 top 10 defenses in, like, cold, windy weather. I wouldn't go crazy that, like, it's time to sound the alarm on anything here. Eagles have been struggling to create good offense all season. I do want to see who they play next. This is actually going to be huge for them. They're going to be on the road in the Dome in Dallas. That should be a game where the Eagles offense gets right here. But I did want to bring up something I thought just kind of waved off as silly was, like, we talked about it and we factored it in with Saquon. I still ended up drafting him in a few spots of just, like, I don't know. I got burned so bad in 2024. I almost drafted him in a few spots as insurance because I just can't get crushed by Saquon back-to-back years. We got crushed for not even having Saquon as the RB1. I know some others didn't want to move off of Saquon as RB1, which, like, was fair. Like, he probably should have been the RB1 heading into this year. He was my RB2. I had Jahmyr Gibbs ahead, which, like, still isn't even that great. Like, the proper ranking would have been CMC 101 in terms of, like, realistic outcomes because no one was taking JT 101. But we talked about this and we mentioned this last year, and I dug up the spreadsheet we talked on the offseason, but these running backs that end up with 400-plus touches, right, like regular season and playoff schedule included here, everybody besides Marshawn Lynch in 2013 had a regression in points per game, and only LaDainian Tomlinson repeated at 20-plus points per game, but that was a 32% drop-off from his 30.2 points per game the season prior. And Saquon now joins this list. This is 10 running backs since 2004 to be 26 years old or later, had 400-plus touches, and then played 10 or more games in the following season. About on average, they regressed in points per game like 25%. You can see Saquon, he goes from 22.8 points per game to now a 10-game sample here at 15.1 points per game. Just really brutal. His yards per game is down. His efficiency is down. He's not breaking off long plays. Yes, the offensive line is banged up. Now Lane Johnson is hurt. It's tough. I hate to say it, but it really kind of is sound the alarms on Saquon. But I will say he has the upside to be like last year's JT, where he wasn't good on the front end of the season. But if you can just kind of hold on here, he gets Las Vegas at home week 15. Then he gets Washington, and then he gets the Bills, who the Bills just let Sean Tucker run wild, and the Bills' rushing defense isn't really that great. I want to say Derrick Henry on primetime ran all over them, so that's 3 rushing defenses that aren't that great. I do want to make sure, in terms of fantasy points allowed, yeah, exactly. So this is what you're looking at. The Raiders are the toughest matchup, but Washington he's going to get, who allow the 5th most points to opposing running backs, and the Bills allow the 2nd most points to opposing running backs. He could be one of those guys where he gives you 20-plus points per game for the final 3 weeks and wins people money down the stretch. So that's kind of what you're hoping for with Saquon at this point. I mean, the rest of this team was pretty brutal too. Like, Devontae Smith was a dud. A.J. Brown gets targeted, kind of like squeaky wheel treatment, but it didn't really amount to anything. This Lions defense was on point too. So just kind of a dud of a Sunday night game, but that's where I'm at in terms of this entire week, talking about what I believe matters, the 10 takeaways from week 11 as we look forward to week 12 of the fantasy football season. As always, if you enjoyed this video, leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and I am going to see you in in the next one.
Stones, like this froze, ice cold, oh, oh.